Have you found yourself in a situation where your phone calls are ignored by children? Have you found yourself in a situation where your text messages are ignored by your children? Have you found yourself exasperated, angered, boiling, wondering as to why your own children, young people whom you have invested in your dreams, your expectations, and even your future, kind of ignoring your phone call, ignoring to respond to your text messages, 2, 3 days, even sometimes up to 5 days down the line, and there has not been any response. If you have found yourself in that situation or in that position, then this episode is meant for you. 2 things that you should not do to your children, and 2 things that you must do to your children. Welcome to these dynamics, and as I try to engage us in these complexities that have left many families bruised, has left many children really kind of broken. To take you back to a point in time when your child, that very daughter, that very son, when she was about 2 years, maybe 3 years old, and you have just come from work, and try to remember the excitement that this child displayed towards you, that showed towards you. The child wouldn't even give you time to remove your tie, to remove your shoes, and there he or she will be all over you, trying to hug you, wanting to tell you or even communicate to you in an intelligible language that only he or she understands. And I want to take you back to that point in time when that child believed that you are superior and you know everything. The child believed that you have answers to all his or her problems. Sometimes your child will tell you that you are stronger than the parent of so and so, you are the most powerful person within that locality, and that you are the best person, most knowledgeable person in that locality. And now just fast forward when your child is maybe 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, maybe even up to 27, and your child, the last person that he or she wants to see in his or her life is you. To the extent that you come in through the front door and your child walks out through the kitchen door. To the extent that the food is served on the table and the best he or she can do is to either come and get his or her food well before you come onto the table, or only come to the table after you have finished and maybe retreated to your bedroom or to some other place away from the sitting or living room. If this is the kind of relationship that you are experiencing with your child, there are very high chances that the bond between you and your children is long broken. There is a very high chance that the connection between you and your children is not complete. That there is a possibility somewhere along the line you touched the most painful nerve in the life, in the experience of that child, to the extent that the one-time all-knowing parent, most powerful parent, most loving parent has now become a demon, someone who is and should be the last person to be seen or even exist in the child or in the heart, in the life of your child. Chances of you having wounded your child are very high, and it is your responsibility to dig back into your life. What is it that possibly you may have done to your child that has caused all these kind of what is it that you could have done in the course of life of this child so that it kind of broke the connection? There are things that we say, there are things that we do to our children, and these things completely shatter them. It shatters their identity. It kills them. It smothers them. It slowly makes them fall, turn off. They start disconnecting. They start switching off their dreams, their expectations, and suddenly what once was love starts turning into resentment, and gradually at some point it is no longer resentment, it is hatred, and at some point your own child will kill you 1,000,000 times in his mind, wishing that maybe you wouldn't be there. Up to 1,000,000 times your child may wish that maybe you die, maybe you'd vanish, maybe you disappear. And when it comes to this point, you don't have a child. You don't. And that child doesn't have you either, whether you are the mother, whether you are the father. These are two enemies living in the same place, only, or rather with both of them, waiting for the demise or the departure of the other. There are several ways that we harm our own children, by what we do to them, by what we say to them. And let me begin by what we say to them. What we say to our children, interestingly, could be more disastrous, more destructive than what we actually do to them. For instance, comparing our children to other children, comparing your child with the child of the neighbor, comparing your child to his or her classmate, comparing your child with your brother's children or with whoever. In other words, the moment we try to blame and kind of expect our children to behave, act, and measure to the position of the other children, it is as disastrous, as destructive to our child or to our children as it could possibly be. It kills, it kind of makes the child feel unwanted. And the child will be wondering that, where is my father? Because this is not my father. This is the father of the other child. This is the father of the other children. Because he sees me as being inadequate, and therefore he expects me to measure to the degree of the other child. And that is the point also where we really lose our children, comparing them to other children. Secondly, placing very high expectations upon our children. There is something that we want our children to be. There is something that we wanted to become in our lives, and maybe we couldn't. And now we want to kind of make up for the lost time, for the inability that we had during our time. And therefore, we want our children to live our lives, to replay our game to our expectations, forgetting that every child, every person has his or her own limitations, his or her own capabilities, and therefore we end up raising the bar far too high for that child. And when we cannot compliment, even despite the effort and despite the effort, despite the determination and commitment of this child to strive to measure to your expectations, but because your bar that you put upon him or her is so high and the child cannot reach, and therefore it comes to a point when he or she feels like, I'm not too good enough for this man. And therefore the moment the child starts feeling like he or she is not too good for you, then you're losing that child. It means that this child at some point will start looking, or rather satisfying himself, will start doing things for himself as compared to doing it for his personal development, his personal satisfaction. He realizes that you don't appreciate his effort. You don't appreciate whatever he or she is, whatever he or she was meant to be. Therefore, let us learn to appreciate our children. The little effort they put, that is theirs. That is them. Let us lower our bar. Let us lower the bar that we placed for them. Let us also learn not to compare. Let us try to avoid. Let's avoid comparing our children to other children, because we all know that no two people will ever be the same. Even the very fraternal twins or identical twins, they will never be the same. And therefore, it's important for us to factor in this. The other thing that where we break our children is the manner in which we act with them. How do we what is it that we have done to them? We have injured our children. The mistake or the wrong that our children may have committed, to them, yes, it is a mistake, but it may not be as big as we want to portray it to be. We have given a punishment that does not commensurate to the wrong that the children committed. And remember, the level or the perception of this wrong to the parent, it may be very big, but what about to the child? It may be small. How often have we heard of a child who is maybe 15, 16, 20 years old lamenting and saying that the punishment that I was given is way too big. It's far too big as compared to the wrong that I did. How often have we heard of our children saying that nimepigwa bure? That was something so small, and my parent, my father, my mother should not have overreacted. And yet that is another area where we cause injury. That is another area where we end up causing a traumatic experience to our children. We cause a psychological wound that will linger, that will live in this child for the rest of his life. And the child grows up with that kind of resentment, with that kind of perception that my parents don't really love me. My parents are overbearing. My parents are not patient with me. And then in the process, as the child grows, he grows along with some kind of a wall, a gap between them and the parents. Let us not shatter the dreams, the expectation, the potentials of our children because we have raised the bar too high, because we have put a tag of only how big a mistake is. And maybe it is time for us as parents to consider, should we punish our children for every mistake that they do? Should we punish our children? Should we even raise awareness? Should we be aware of every mistake that our children do? Shouldn't there come to a time when we see and we realize that our child has made a mistake and we overlook it? We just ignore with just a simple, kind statement. My child, even though you did that, I'm not very pleased. Please don't do it next time. I think that could set the tone, could possibly be more desirable, more constructive to the child as compared to raising the voice, throwing words, calling names. We have even seen where situations whereby parents have actually said that you worthless, good for nothing child. It shatters, it kills, it destroys, it completely it is just too poisonous. It destroys the child. And these are the kind of things that we as parents really need to evaluate how best to handle these things, and maybe even how best to really encourage. Rather than being people who punish, let us seek to reform our children. In the West, prisons or correctional centers are not for punishment, but indeed for correctional. Unlike the prisons within the Kenyan or within the African setup, where prisons are largely places to settle scores with your enemies. Let us be rehabilitators and not punishers. Viewer, you are watching Family Therapy Podcast with George Chacha. I request you to send me a text, send me a response in regard to what I have said. Let me hear your input, what you have to say. In my next episode, I will be talking about how should we handle, specifically, how should we treat, how should we act towards children who have emotionally, mentally, and even socially broken up. Or maybe you have a comment in regard to, in the light of what I have said. I request you to subscribe to this channel, click the bell, and click the like. Let us try to seek, let us seek. Our children are our hope for tomorrow. And if we destroy them today, then it means we have destroyed our future. If we destroy them today, it means we have destroyed our security, our social security. We have even destroyed our own shelter at our old age. And there is, it is therefore important for us to navigate very, very cautiously around this very slippery and difficult road which borders between us as parents, being able to kind of balance our emotion, balance our rationale during those times when our children are actually torn between being themselves and being what we want them to be. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for your time. I don't take your time for granted. And remember, your comment, your response to what I have said gives me strength and even encourages me to talk more about this. Very often I'll be talking things from my personal experience. I am somebody of a relative age. I'm somebody who has actually gone through a lot of phases of life, and to be where I am, it hasn't been easy. Sometimes there are moments when I feel like I'm breaking, I'm cracking on the inside. And that's when I feel like maybe I need to talk. I need to warn others. And remember, even the Bible says that while the rich man was burning in hell and he saw Lazarus on the chest of Abraham, and he said, Father Abraham, allow me to send Lazarus to my family so that he may warn them. And here I am. I am warning many parents, and I am calling on many children. In the course of time, I will also be sharing a topic specifically geared towards the young people, what they need to know about their parents.